So I'm waiting outside the office, my professor's office, to see it and learn about my essay plan, which is essentially all I did over the weekend. It's not even that good. I'm gonna see what happens. Hopefully it'll be good. Yeah.
So that's me from 2 years ago when I was an undergraduate student in my second year of my comparative literature degree at King's College London. And boy oh boy, was I stressed about my essays. Humanities essays are a whole world of pain and suffering, and oh my god, it's so difficult. So if you're a student who's clicked on this video and you are exactly like me from 2 years ago, where you're panicking and worrying about your essay and it's all you've been thinking about for the past month or whatever, fear not, because I'm here to bring you the most honest guide to humanities essays that I can do now that I have graduated with a first and moved on to my master's. Now, I cannot guarantee that these tips will give you a first or a 2-1 or whatever grade it is you're aiming for, just because there are so many factors involved when it comes to writing humanities essays, and if you've clicked on this video, you're probably just as frustrated with them as I was. But I can tell you that if you follow these steps right the way through, from the lecture notes to the seminar notes to the research to the writing, you will come out with an essay that you are proud of. And I've always found that the essays that I can look back on and be like, oh, that wasn't totally crap, they tend to do a lot better. So let's jump into the video, and good luck. So the first thing to do, even before you start your essay, is to just understand the difference between humanities subjects and other subjects, because it's a big difference. You need to understand the fundamental differences between humanities degrees and other subjects, for example, business and law, and that is its variety. So if I take the example of business and law, if you think about it, the topics that they get taught are pretty consistent across like universities and across degrees, because if you think about it, it makes sense. Because with business or law, you're working towards a specific vocation, and therefore you need a specific set of knowledge. And it doesn't really, like, from what I have heard, there's not a lot of variation. But with humanities degrees, oh my god, it's so different. But what this means, specifically when it comes to writing essays, is that two people attending the same lecture can walk out of there with two completely different sets of notes, which is so frustrating. So let's say the topic, for example, is to do with the idea of Western thought and the development of the philosophy of thought. Just a light-hearted, fun topic, you know. You might have already known about the concept of Orientalism as a part of Western thought. So when you're writing your notes, you didn't focus on that, and instead maybe focused on the section where they talked about Greek philosophers. Meanwhile, the person sitting next to you has only just heard about Orientalism, doesn't know anything about it, and so their notebook looks like it was written by Edward Said himself. And that's because, quoting the Britannica Encyclopedia, humanities are literally just about branches of knowledge that concern themselves with human beings. How the fuck are you meant to write notes about the entirety of humanity? Well, we can try. Now this is like the meat of the video. I don't know why I said it like that. Since lectures and seminars are usually where you're going to get most of your ideas from for your essay, which I will talk about in more detail later. And it's really good because you can then use these ideas as springboards for topics that you then go on to research. But sometimes there's just so much information in a humanities lecture that you're like, what the fuck am I meant to be writing down? So my advice, like in the previous example that I gave, is to just write down what interests you and things that you don't know, and make sure that in your lecture notes, particularly lecture notes, not really for seminar notes, but I guess it can apply to seminar notes, but basically, in your lecture notes, you can see the argument that your professor is trying to lay out, because more often than not, when you attend a humanities lecture, your professor is trying to present a certain argument based on research that they have already done, because they're a very smart person. And then you can say, I understand the argument that they're making. Let me see if I can use this for my essay. I would also say 100% write things on your laptop, if you can. I remember a lot of my professors were quite pernickety about it, and they would say, write things down on notebooks because then you remember it better. And some of them like banned laptops. But if you can, write it down on a laptop, because it's so much easier, because then afterwards you can just do a cheeky Control F and like try and find things in your notes, and it's so much easier. Don't worry about going back to your lecture notes. I didn't do that often. I remember I tried really hard to do it in first year, and honestly it didn't really help very much. My advice is, if you do want to consolidate your lecture notes, just write down 3 points that interested you that you can maybe come back to later with the essay in mind. Now for seminars, if you can, do the readings, okay? I cannot emphasize this enough. Trust me, you think you don't have time now to do the reading, but wait until it's the end of the semester when you have 4,000 word essays due all in the same week, and you also have to read the text for it, do the research for all of them, and then you also have to study for 5 different exams. It's too stressful. Don't. Oh, the trauma. A good way that I found to help me get through the material quickly was actually listening to audiobooks where possible, because I could listen to it on my commutes to work or my commutes home, and that way, if I had forgotten to do the reading for a seminar, because a lot of people underestimate how busy university students can be if you have to like work and pay for your rent and stuff. So don't feel bad if you can't do the reading, but it's very useful to have an audiobook, because even when I was like on my way to a seminar and I just listened to the audiobook, it was so much easier because I had already absorbed some of the information before I went in. And seminars are a really good place to bounce ideas off of people for essays, so don't be scared of having opinions about a text, particularly because we all know humanities degrees are rife with people who have very strong opinions and maybe shouldn't say them. And even if you can't read the full text, just do something, skim read it, read a summary, ask a friend to explain it to you. It's better to have some idea of what is going on in a seminar rather than zoning out. Trust me, I've been there, done that. Don't do it. So the next point is planning and researching, and I'm going to break this one down into different stages. So stage 1 is the idea stage, and essentially you want to start thinking about the essay as soon as possible. If the professor or lecturer has put the essay notes on your like online learning platform, read them before you go to a lecture, so that in the lecture you can be thinking about your essay and be like, oh, that's a point that I can use in my essay, and write it down on the side. That was immensely helpful for me. I found the longer that I let ideas sort of fester in my brain, it was so much easier when I came to the planning stage, because then I already had ideas and I didn't feel so overwhelmed. The foundation of any good essay is just a strong argument, which is basically an argument that you personally believe in and can justify with further research. So if you have ideas that interest you, that you believe in, it's going to be so much easier to write the essay. Stage 2 is the planning stage, and like sort of the physical planning. The purpose of planning is essentially to, 1, try to make your argument as easily understandable and logical as possible, and 2 is to make it way easier for you when you get to the writing stage. Even if your ideas change, it is so helpful to have a good plan when you start writing, just so that it feels like less of an overwhelming task and you have something that you can refer to. I personally recommend physical planning. This is where your lecturers are right about writing things out helps you remember it better. I found that when I wrote out my essay plans, it was so much easier because I actually processed these things better, and I could see, I like taking like a big sheet of A3 paper and writing out 3 points that I had for my essay, and then putting like different bullet points underneath those 3 subheadings. And after you've made a plan, go to your lecturer, okay? It's so helpful to talk it over with them. And cheeky pro tip, because even if you don't necessarily get anything out of talking to them, it's helpful, because then even if your essays are being marked anonymously and you have a very specific idea, when they're marking it, they might be like, oh, I remember Priyanka was talking about this with me before. This is her essay. Let me see what she said. And if you've left it too late, don't worry, same. I used to do that all the time. Go to a trustworthy friend who will tell you if they think your ideas are crap.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Now, stage 3 is research, and understandably, it's very intimidating because it can be so overwhelming and you just don't know where to start. But my advice is, do not start researching until you have solidified your ideas. It will just make it so much easier, because then you actually have a direction and an intention of what you need to research and what you want to research for your essay. My advice is just to identify parts of your ideas that are lacking, or if you don't know what you're saying, just go and research and then come back and you can develop your ideas. If you don't know where to start with texts, go to your lecturer or drop them an email, ask them for texts on a specific subject. It's so useful and it's so underrated. And of course, we love JSTOR, the OG. Also can totally work the opposite way as well. If you don't have very concrete ideas, it's always chill to go and research to come up with more ideas and then come back to it after too. This is just the way that I found worked best. If you have put all these steps together, coming to sit down and write shouldn't be too much of an issue. My advice is, of course, the usual: break it down into chunks, so a 5,000 word essay is not as overwhelming as writing 500 words. That's a given. Write your first draft early, take some time away from it and come back to edit it. All the essays that I did this for got firsts. Even if you only have like an hour to go away from it and then come back to it, it's still so helpful, because getting that distance from your work means that you have more objectivity when you sit down and be like, what parts can I take out? What parts can I make sound better? The method that I actually used for my dissertation was to literally print out the essay, cut it up into bits, and then move it around to see if my argument flowed. And of course, give yourself time for your references and your bibliography. It is always going to take longer than you think. Give yourself a day, because that one full stop that's out of place might be the thing that takes your essay from a first down to a 2-1, and it is the most frustrating thing ever. And a quick side note, if you're including something rogue in your essay, like a picture or a piece of media that you don't know how to reference, always email your professor just to make sure you get it right, because I know specifically for MHRA referencing, the guides online are absolutely terrible and sometimes you just don't know how to reference things. Also, if possible, try and submit it at least a day early. I know that's not always possible. I definitely submitted a lot of essays just before the deadline, but if you can, I do recommend it, just because the next day sometimes I would read through my essays and find some mistakes, and then you have that leeway to go back and change it and re-upload it. So I really, really, really hope that this helped you guys. I wish someone had told me these things when I was starting out my degree. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe for more bookish, poetry, literature content, all that stuff I know humanities nerds are into, because I'm one of them. Do let me know what you'll think if you're a student watching this. Comment below, what are you studying? What essay do you have to write? I'm very curious. Let's chat about it in the comments, you know? Let off some steam. Essay writing is really difficult. Yeah, so that's all from me for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.